after many questions, I've been asked to do these undisguised now, so I don't give a shit. So it's undisguised. Subscribe to this YouTube channel and stuff. I hope you can fucking understand them now, because people are moaning. Okay, so we're on interview 3 about me being a werewolf. I've been captured by the armed forces. I've met the chief interrogator of the armed forces. That was in chapter 1 and chapter 2. Those interviews, you can go back and listen to him. I introduced my posit, which is my werewolf soul. He's he's like a separate entity to me. He looks like a fucking ghost wolf, alright? He follows me around. We're kind of pals, talk through telepathy and stuff. And when I want to be a werewolf, he'll be absorbed into me, and I'll turn into a werewolf or a wolf or whatever. So that's quickly going over it. These interviews, you can go and speak to me. Actually, apparently I'm going to be an administrator or whatever on a website, what is it again? Werewolf.host, right? Because you not afford .com now. Okay. Anyway, getting back to the story. So we're in chapter 3. So I've spoken to the chief. I've not given him any information, not told him anything. So this is the next step of what they did. So soon after the chief had left and the room that I was in, if you've listened to chapter 2, it's probably a good idea to go listen to it. Then 2 more soldiers came into the room with like biochem suits on, gas masks and the full shit. They pulled a hose from a storage place in the wall and rolled it out so that it ended within a couple of meters of the cage that I was sat. One of the soldiers then held the nozzle and pointed it in my direction. The other soldier went back to where the hose had been stored, and out of my sight started turning a tap or something that started the high power jet of cold water. This like mini tsunami then blasted me as I just fucking sat on my ass in the cage. I was like, fuck you, and did not move or respond to the high pressure cold water. I just stared through the jet of water at the guard doing it. I wouldn't move. I would just stare. They'd begun feeling pretty confident that it would be a horrible experience for me. As the process showed no apparent effect on me, I sensed the 2 guards' discomfort build. They really did not like the fact that I just sat on the ground smiling at them. The water, once it had been blasted at me, then drained through, there's like grates that surrounded the cage in the floor, and eventually the hosing stopped. They just gave up and they reeled it back into the cupboard and stored it away. You could see now that the 2 guards were actually quite shaken, and they left. And I was cold. I was like really cold. I wanted to get furred up to get warm, but knew that I had to think about if that was a good idea or not at this moment in time. I could not die of cold. I knew that, but it was not a nice feeling to sit there on cold metal floor, wet and fucking miserable. I stayed in like a kneeling position and stared at the door, and as I slowly dried off, I was giving away a lot by not reacting to the cold. Was it a bad thing that I was not getting hypothermia from this process? Maybe. I would not be showing them my wolf side without fucking any reason though. That would, I'd need to justify it. Time passed. I couldn't really tell if it was night or day or how many hours had actually been spent. The light was always on. I spent a lot of time talking to my werewolf soul, my posit. He tried to leave a few more times from the room. Each time he was not able to get through the doors or the walls. I eventually had to do my business through the bars of the cage like a fucking animal. They'd given me a bucket, but I was keeping that to store some water in it. Some of the sprayed water that, I could collect. For the next few, I assume, days, the chief soldier would come in and enter. He would tell me I was a werewolf, and then the soldiers would come in and hose me and my cage clean. They had brought me no food or water apart from the hosing. They brought me nothing, no clothes or cover. They never even kind of asked me anything. They just went through the same set of processes each time. It was like, I suppose it's classic interrogation. After a lot of this treatment, they then added the sleep deprivation thing where they try to keep you awake so that it breaks you. The problem they had here was that they could not come near me to wake me, so they would they'd only use noise and hosing and some like high decibel alarms to stop me pretending to be asleep. Did not realise I didn't really need sleep. At least they felt like they had a victory in that area. In fact, the only pleasure I would get from sleeping is the break in monotony. Monotony, is that the word? Monotony, thank you. There is only so much I spy with my little eye. You can play with a posit who cheats by reading your fucking mind. And actually, there's only so many objects you can choose from a room that you've been in for a long time. After several what felt like hundreds of these visits, the chief guy came in once more and dragged the chair forward to its usual spot and spoke. Will, we've not fed you for 10 days now, he said. I nodded. Do you realise you're in a room that is maintained at 4 degrees centigrade? I shook my head. I didn't know. You are not dead, ill, or wasting away. Would you like to try and explain that to me? I was still sat before him cross-legged and trying to come across all scary and intimidating and shit, which is actually quite hard for a cross-legged naked man. I'd now realised that there was no other way out of this. I'd kind of had to accept that this entire setup meant that even with my abilities, I probably could not escape. I also realised that with my ADHD mindset, that would eventually go fucking mental if held here much longer. So I thought it was time to be honest. Okay. I'm a werewolf, I said, shrugging my shoulders. His head snapped up from the papers. It's pretty hard to hurt me or stop me, although I have to admit that you have an exceptional setup here that is certainly doing that. I have been trying to work out how to get out, and to be honest, I think that I'm fucked. I smiled and reached forward and held one of the big heavy metal bars in my right hand. So you realise and believe that you are a werewolf then? Asked the chief. So I told him, yep. I am a motherfucking ball-licking Scooby-Dooing werewolf. I can prove it if you wish, I told him. The chief held up a hand towards me. No, it's okay. We knew that it was the case. We have to say we have never seen anything like you before. When the first reports came in that you were on the scene, we thought there was like some hallucinogenic gas being released into the area. We all thought that our guys saw things that weren't there. It was assumed it would be like PTSD or some shit like that. He seemed now to want to talk after long times of silences. Then, shockingly, we got footage of you in that last village. We have these satellites and planes that fly out of your sight. They spotted you while you did your I suppose you'd call it work. They recorded your changing forms and how you were, mainly just fucking killing people. So we know what you are. Capturing you was a whole operation in this war itself, and it was cunningly called Operation Dog Pound. At this name I laughed, as it was a well-chosen moniker for the whole plan to capture me. I'm kind of here to speak to you and see what that's all about, son. Are you the result of some set of sick experiments or something, or is there more to the legend of the Wolfman? Fuck, this shit is unbelievable. I love your movies. Who knew you were real? I smiled, and I moved towards the bars and knelt there looking at him. I smiled again nicely and asked him, what do you want me to say? What do you want me to do? So he continued, well, let's start at the beginning. What is your name and where are you from? I felt like I was on some fucking game show, but what the hell, here I go. Surrounding the building were